Hi, it's Camilla from the Sewing Society, and in today's video I'm going to be taking you through some of the basics of the sewing machine, including the basic operations and the stitch functions. If you're thinking about learning how to sew, I know that the sewing machine part of it and not quite knowing where to begin can be intimidating, but please don't be scared. It's really straightforward, and I'm going to show you how to thread the machine and how to get started. I use this machine every day, and it's a really basic machine. You don't need anything fancy to sew, and in my opinion, the simpler the better. You don't want to get confused with all the millions of different stitches when you only really need two to sew. I'll put a link in the description below for this particular model machine. It's kind of at the higher end of the basic models, but not expensive. Okay, let's get started with the mechanics of the machine and how it operates. I'll be doing this tutorial on an electric machine with manual dials. If you have a computerized machine, the instructions are the same. However, changing the settings will be a little different. All electric machines will have a power cord and an on and off switch. This is usually located at the back of the machine or on the end of the right hand side of the machine. Sometimes there is a separate cord for the pedal. In this case, the pedal and the power cord are connected together. The machine is operated with the pedal by your foot. Driving a sewing machine is a little bit like driving a car. You have the acceleration and you control the speed with the foot pedal. On the right hand end of the machine, there is a manual hand wheel that makes the needle go up and down. Stitches are made up of a top thread and a bobbin thread. To access the bobbin, we need to remove the extension table to get to the bobbin compartment. To remove the bobbin case, lift the latch in front and it should come out easily. Inside the bobbin case lives the bobbin. Bobbins can be plastic or metal. In this case, I have a plastic one. They do vary in size depending on the machine. Do check before you buy any that you're getting the correct one for your machine and model. And now I'm going to show you how to thread a bobbin. At the top of your machine, there will be a couple of spool needles. Extend one of them and put your spool of thread on top. Wind the thread around the bobbin thread guide. The bobbin will have a little thread hole on both sides. It doesn't matter which one you choose. Guide the thread through one of those holes like this. Next, place the bobbin onto the bobbin winding spindle. Then push it over to the right. On my machine, to activate the bobbin spindle, I also need to extend the hand wheel. Not all machines will need this extra step. Holding on to the thread that is coming out of the thread hole on the bobbin, gently put your foot onto the pedal and the winder should begin. Keep your foot down until the bobbin is full. It will stop winding once the thread hits the bobbin stopper. At that point, take your foot off the pedal and trim the thread. Return the bobbin spindle to the left to be able to take the bobbin off. Pop the machine wheel back into place. And now it's time to put the bobbin into the bobbin case. So I know which way the bobbin needs to go into the bobbin case, I make sure that the bobbin with a tail of thread hanging down looks like the letter P. Then take the bobbin case and hold the latch out while you're putting the bobbin into the case. Once the bobbin is in the case, you can let go of the latch and take the thread around until it meets the thread notch on the bobbin case. Then pull the thread underneath the tension spring. Once the thread is under the spring, you should be able to hold the thread and the bobbin like this, and it shouldn't unravel. You should be able to pull the thread through easily. There is a tiny screw on the side of the bobbin case that can be used to adjust the tension. Next, we need to put the bobbin case into the bobbin case holder. While holding the latch, align the hole that is in the middle of the bobbin with the holder. You should hear a little click and make sure that the latch is now flat. Now it's time to thread the top thread. Each machine will be a little bit different, but basically the same. The thread goes through a series of guides before finally getting to the needle to be threaded through the eye. There should be arrows and or numbered steps on your machine to direct you. Take your time making sure to get each guide as you follow the numbers. Next, we need to thread the needle, which I think is the hardest part about this whole procedure. So take your time, trim the edge of your thread so that it's nice and clean, making it easier to get through the eye. Now we need to get the bobbin thread to the top. To do this, gently hold the top thread while with your other hand gently turn the manual wheel, and you'll see the top thread come down and loop up the bobbin thread. Once the loop appears, you can gently tug on the top thread and a loop should come up to the surface. Pull that thread through. Now you've successfully threaded your sewing machine. Close the bobbin hatch and put the extension table back in place. I just wanted to go through some of the feet that should come with your machine. The first one is the regular foot that you'll use for most projects. The one in the middle is a zipper foot, and the third one is a buttonhole foot. I'll show you how to put the regular foot onto the machine. This model, the foot just snaps on and off. You might have a machine that has a little button that releases the foot. It will be somewhere close to the foot, probably on the foot shank. All the different feet will have a bar in the middle where it attaches to the foot shank. There will be a lever in this area of the sewing machine to lift the foot up and down. The foot's purpose is to keep the fabric in place and helps feed the fabric through the machine. Another crucial part to the operation are the feed dogs. They also help to feed the fabric through the machine. You can see them here going up and down, and they work together with the presser foot to move the fabric. This is a cross-section view of what the machine is doing now that it's threaded up. As the needle rises, it releases the upper thread, allowing the shuttle to catch it and create a loop. The shuttle then pulls the bobbin thread up through the loop, forming a stitch. This process repeats with each needle movement, creating the stitches in your fabric. Now that we've got the machine all set up and we have an understanding of how things work, we're going to look at the different stitches and how to set them up for different fabrics. I've got two different kinds of fabric to show you different stitches on. One is a woven fabric and the other is a knit fabric. A woven fabric is made on a loom and has a warp and a weft thread. Knitted fabric is created by looping one or more sets of yarn, forming a continuous chain of loops. This process can be done by hand or more commonly by machine when it's made into a fabric. An item of clothing that you might have made with knitted fabric would be a t-shirt or swimwear. Before we start stitching, let's go through some of the markings on the machine and what they mean. This dial here affects the tension of the upper thread. Number 4 is the medium tension or standard tension for straight stitch. If you go higher, it makes the tension tighter, and lower the tension looser. As we move over, it's got markings for the buttonhole steps. We can see here it says 1 to 4, meaning that it's a 4-step buttonhole. The letters on the dial correspond to the different stitches in the table. You'll notice that there are 2 sets of letters going from A to G. The second row is accessed by turning the dial to SS, which means stretch stitch. If you want to make a buttonhole, turn that same dial to the little drawing that looks like a buttonhole. And then on the first dial, you go through each of the steps 1 to 4 to make a buttonhole. I'm going to do a separate tutorial all about buttons and buttonholes, so keep an eye out for that one soon. Okay, let's start sewing a straight stitch. This is the most common stitch and you'll use it for almost all of your projects. Straight stitch is most commonly used on woven fabrics. We're going to set the stitch to A and then the stitch length to 2.5. So the numbers on this dial refer to the stitch length in millimeters. 2.5 millimeters is a typical stitch length. You can go larger for thicker fabrics and smaller for finer fabrics. Now with my little piece of shirting fabric, put the fabric underneath the foot by lifting the lever on the side. Hold on to the 2 threads so that they don't slip away, especially the top thread can unthread itself from the needle. After you've done a couple of stitches, you can let go. We want to do some reverse stitches at the beginning and the end of our line of stitching. This locks those stitches in place. Hold or push the reverse button down just enough to make a couple of stitches and then release. To keep stitches in a straight line, I like to use all sorts of different guides on the foot plate. You can see the different seam allowance increments, but also the foot is really good as well to help you keep your stitches straight. So here I'm using the gap in the middle of the foot to line up to the edge of the fold, and that's helping me to keep the stitches straight. When you get to the end of your line of stitching, lift the needle up by rotating the manual wheel towards you so that the needle is out of the fabric. Then with the foot lever, lift the foot up and then pull the fabric away, leaving some long threads before you snip them. And that's how to stitch a line of straight stitching on your sewing machine. If you'd like to learn about seams, I have a video that I'll leave a link to in the description below. Next, we're going to move on to the second stitch that you'll need to learn, which is zigzag stitch. Now we need to turn the dial to C and to the bigger end of the scale, meaning that the zigzag width is quite wide. And then for the distance between each zigzag, we're going to take the length dial to about 1.5. Zigzag and woven fabric are really good together when it comes to finishing seams. It works a bit like an overlocker. When using zigzag stitch to finish off a raw edge, the idea is to have the stitches wrapping around the edge of the fabric, minimizing the amount of fraying. On this sample, I've lined up the edge of the fabric with the middle of the foot, which means the needle goes from side to side over the fabric. My fabric is a little bit fluffy, but you get the idea. You can see how the stitches have wrapped around the edge. This same zigzag stitch can be used to sew knit fabric with just a couple of adjustments to the size and the length. I'm going to turn the dial to make the zigzag a little bit shallower and elongated, and also turn the length up to 2. We need to use a zigzag stitch on knitted fabric because it stretches with the fabric. If we were to use straight stitch on a knit fabric, the stitches would break because there isn't any movement. You can see here that there is still lots of stretch and movement in the fabric with the zigzag stitch. You can have a play around with all the different stretch stitches on your machine. There are some really cute ones and some decorative ones. You can see which one you like using the most. I'll show you how to use the straight stretch stitch. Whew, that's a tongue twister. This is a triple stretch stitch, which means the needle goes back and forth a few times to make the stitch stretchy. So there you have it. We've covered the straight stitch for knit and woven fabric and the zigzag stitch for knit and woven fabric. Now I hope you have the confidence to start sewing using these 2 stitches. I hope you liked that little introduction to sewing machine basics, and I hope that if you were feeling at all nervous about where to begin with a sewing machine, this has put your mind at ease a little bit. Please let me know if you've got any questions and I'll do my best to answer them. I hope this is the beginning of an amazing sewing journey for you. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already for some more sewing videos like this one. And I'll see you next time.